friends. Today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the Lime Crime Greatest Hits Bangers palette, as well as including 3 different eye looks using this palette. This palette contains 18 shades. There's a mix of mattes and shimmers, and you can see that there's quite a few different color options going on inside. But before we get into it, I want to welcome you back to my channel, or if you are new here, then welcome. My name is Kara. I'm a 40-year-old professional with 2 kids and a massive love of makeup. On my channel, we like to mix beauty, brains, and the occasional F-bomb. So if that sounds like something that's up your alley, just keep watching. All right, let's get into it. The palette retails on the Lime Crime website for $79 Canadian, and like I said, there are 18 shades inside. The shades that they have chosen to include are already existing in their other palettes. Lucky for me, I don't have any of their other palettes, so I'm not worried about any overlap. But if you do have some of their pre-existing palettes, you might want to cross-reference just to see how much overlap there might be, because that might skew whether or not this is worth it to you to pick up. So there are the shades in there. I will let you know that on the back of the palette, it says that it is made in the US, it is cruelty-free, and it is vegan. Taking a look at the shades, you can see that there are 9 mattes and 9 shimmers, and there is a whole variety of colors going on here. So you have everything from really light lilacs, which is what I have on my eyes today, to more grungy options down here, and then nice reds. There's all sorts of things going on in here. I'm gonna save my thoughts on the palette for the end of this video. I just want to get into some swatches. We're going to do the 3 eye looks, and then I will let you know what my thoughts on this are afterwards. So let's not delay the inevitable. Let's just get straight into the swatches. All right, so we're going to start here, go across the top row, which is all the shimmers, and then we'll go and do the mattes after that. So here is the shade Radiant, which is described as a peach pearl metallic duochrome. Next to it is Heavenly, a rich rose gold foil. Right here is Hail, light silver foil. Beside that is Myth, a silvery green foil. This purple shade here is called Beam, a lit lilac with pink shift, and it's described as a foil. Beside that is Shell, an opalescent shell pink, described as a glow finish. Next to that is Crown, an icy champagne foil. This shade here is called Pigeon. It's a brown-green shift, described as a metallic duochrome. And then the last of the shimmery shadows is Aura, a golden ivory metallic. Coming back down to the second row where all of the mattes are, this shade is called Dreamy. It is a mauve. Next to it, appropriately enough, is named Mustard. It's described as the color of corduroy, but I think it could be described as the color of mustard more aptly. Anyways, moving on. Next to that is Mud, a rich burgundy brown, the color of spoiled fruit. Is that not enticing? Then next to that one is Divine, a dusty stone. Then we have Ripe, which is a warm terracotta, followed by Flora, a deep coral. This deep orange shade here is called Jam, described as a pumpkin spice creamy matte. Then we have In Bloom, a muted rose. And the last one is Muse, a deep burgundy red. All right, and with the swatches complete, let's get into the eye looks. All right, so I'm going to start with this shade Mustard here, and I'm going to pick it up on my MAC 217 brush. And I'm just going to pat it all over my lid. Then I'm going to go in with this orange shade called Jam, And I'm going to pick it up on a fluffier brush. This is from BK Beauty. It's the 202. I'm going to really tap off the excess on that one and then use that to blend out the crease. Then I'm going to use a MAC 221 to pick up this warm brown shade here called Mud. I'm going to pat that into the outer area of my lid. And I'll also use that shade along my lower lash line and into the crease a little bit. I'm going to use the same brush and I'm going to pick up this shade over here, which is called Ripe. And I'm going to use that to help buff out the lower lash line. I'm going to use a different MAC 221 and pick up this red shade down here, which is called Muse. And I'm going to go over the brown on the upper area just to warm it up a bit. Then I'm going to take this brush here from Delium Tools. This is the 716 Smoky Eyeliner brush. And I'm going to use that to pick up this shade Aura for the inner corner and along my brow bone. Okay, and then I'm going to apply some brown pencil liner to the waterline, a brown eyeliner on top, mascara, and then this look is done. All right, and there is the final look. I don't usually go for all matte looks, but there's something about this mustard that I have paired it with Marrakesh, which is a matte lipstick from MAC, and I just love how autumnal and just so seasonal this look is. I love the warm colors. So pretty. All right, now it's time for me to get the kids to school and get myself to work, so I will see you later for look number 2. All right, so now we're going to start in on look number 2. So to start off, I'm going to take this fluffy blending brush from Delium Tools. It's the number 785, the Tapered Blending, and I'm going to pick up this shade right here, which is called In Bloom. I'm going to put that into my crease and then blend it upwards. Next, I'm going to take a slightly smaller blending brush. This was from Beautylish, part of their 420 set that they had. And I'm going to pick up this shade here called Flora. I'm going to run that through the crease as well, but not take it quite as high as that other shade. Oh my goodness, they're so loud. My son is literally yelling "naked boy" at the top of his lungs. Because he is in fact naked, he's about to take a bath. Okay, well, if you hear my kids in the background, sorry, it is what it is. All right, I'm gonna go in with this smaller brush still here. This one's from Volair, it's the number E07. And I'm going to pick up this deep red shade over here called Muse. And that one I'm going to put on the outer portion of the lid as well and deepen up the crease. It's going to be a game day decision. I might put it on the inner portion and just do like a halo look, or I might not. We'll see how it goes. So I just start off by patting that onto that outer portion just so that it's most concentrated out there. And then what's left on the brush, then I will start to blend it. Okay, I've decided not to put it on the inner portion. I'm just going to keep it on the outside, and then I'm going to use more of like a shimmery shadow on the inside just to brighten things up a little bit. Okay, now although I've already primed my eyes, I am going to go in with a glitter glue. I'm not using a glitter, I am using one of the like sort of duochromatic shades here, but I want it to have as much of a sticky base as possible, so I'm just going to use this glitter glue from e.l.f. Literally have no idea what it's called because it doesn't have anything on it except for e.l.f. I'm kind of just banking on the fact that I think it's a glitter glue. It might actually be a lip balm. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's a glitter glue. We'll find out soon, I guess. So I'm just going to pick it up on like a little, I don't know, a silicone brush of some sort. It's like a spatula. I don't know what it's called. Pretty sure I got it from Sephora. Yes, it's from Sephora, but again, it has no other branding on it except to say Sephora, so wildly helpful. Oh, and then I'm going to get it directly into my lashes. Soup's awesome. Clearly used way too much. So sort of just learn from my mistakes, I guess. Transfer the rest over here. You can see that I'm just sort of keeping it on the inner half of my lid. Well, it's fairly sticky, so I think I made a good guess there. To be fair, I was like 90% certain that it was a glitter glue. There's always that 10% differential though. My preferred flat shader brush is currently Filthy, as are most of my brushes to be fair, but I'm going to use this one here from, again, that Beautylish 420 set. It's not my favorite for what I'm about to use it for, but it'll get the job done. I'm going to use it to pick up this shade called Pigeon, and I'm going to pat that over top of where I just applied the glitter glue. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with this dark brown shade here called Mud, and then I'll blend it out with just a little bit of Muse just to carry that red theme all the way around. So the brush that I'm using is from Sigma, and it is the E42, the Precision Firm Blender brush. So just with the product that's left over on this Volair brush here, I'm just going to use that to buff out the edges. So then for the inner corner and that very inner portion of my lid, I'm going to use this top shade here, which is called Radiant. In the pan, it looks like it's going to be sort of a white shimmer shadow, but it has a really strong pink pull to it. And I'm going to pick that up with this Real Techniques brush, which is the Detailer brush. All right, and there is look number 2 done. I just used the Lancome Monsieur Big mascara. I didn't opt for lashes, although I think this look would be just that much more elevated with them, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I am far too lazy to do lashes right now. Now with respect to the lips, I went for like a sort of monochromatic kind of deal here with like the deep red and the deep red up here. The lipstick that I'm wearing is from Chanel. It's one of the Rouge Coco lipsticks in number 446 Etienne. It looks a lot deeper in the bullet than it does applied, just because it applies fairly sheer. Here's how the eyes look. Here are how the eyes look. Here is how the eyes look. Here's the makeup with black lipstick. Honestly, I don't know which lipstick pairing is my favorite, so you guys let me know down below which one you liked the best. But now it is time for look number 3. Okay, so here we go with look number 3. For this look, I want to dip into the purple side of this palette. I can already tell that I'm going to have a little bit of a struggle though, because there really aren't that many deep matte shades to play with, but we're going to see what we can pull out with this. I might also incorporate some of the green shimmer as well. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. So let's get started. I'm going to use the shade In Bloom here to use as a transition shade, and I'm going to apply that using the BK Beauty 201 brush. Next, I'm going to pick up this shade here called Dreamy, and I'm using the Wayne Goss number 19 brush. I'm going to apply that into my crease. This one appears a little bit more pink on the eye than it does in the pan. In the pan, it looks a little bit more like a deep lilac, but it's appearing very pink once it's blended out. After a ridiculous amount of time spent hemming and hawing over what exactly I'm going to do, I've decided I'm not going to go in with the green. I'm just going to keep it super simple. I'm just going to apply this sparkly purple shade here all over my lid. I'm holding a brush, but honestly, because it's just going all over my lid and there's no precision required, I'm just going to use my finger for that. These shimmer shadows tend to apply better with a finger anyways, as I'm finding out, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back in with that dreamy shade and just blend where those two shadows meet in the crease. Okay, at the risk of ultimately disappointing myself, I am going to take this orange shade here called Jam. Why is the orange shade called Jam? If anything, this shade should be called Jam, but okay, whatever. Anyways, I'm going to apply that to my lower lash line. I figure the orange and the purple are complementary tones. They might have like a good sort of clashing going on, but I guess we'll find out soon. It might be awful. We'll see. I feel pretty neutral about it. I'm not in love with it. I don't hate it. It's just kind of there. Okay, well, moving on. Let's put something in the inner corner. Okay, I'm committed to color now. So let's apply the green to the inner corner. The green is incredibly subtle in here. It's this shade right here called Myth. So I'm just going to pick that up on a MAC 2, I think it's a 219. It's scratched off, but at any rate you can see it there. So I'm just going to pick that up on this brush and put that in the inner corner. It's just kind of a hint of green. Almost pulls a little bit more silvery, to be honest. Not loving that. I'm going to go in with this shade Radiant and just put that on top just cause. I'm hoping that it'll sort of tone down that silver pull a little bit. Don't know that it's made it any better. Well, let's see. Let's go in with this shade Heavenly, just like a sparkly pink. It's going to be the most highlighted of the inner corners. Oh, there we go. I think that's better. It plays a little bit nicer with the purple on the lid. Okay, not super in love with this look, but we're committed to it now, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this eye, do the mascara, do the liner, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to wrap this video up. Be right back. And there is the completed look. I opted not to put liner on my upper lash line. I just did the mascara thing, and then I used an orange liner in my lower waterline. The lipstick that I'm wearing is from Gucci, and it is in the shade Wife vs. Secretary. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. Now it is time to talk about the palette. First of all, let's just mention the packaging. I think it's super cute. I love the floral design on it. I like that it's just a nice rectangle. There's a little bit of a heft to it, but nothing too over the top, nothing that makes it difficult to store. Nice clean lines. It is cardboard packaging. I like that the lid flips all the way back. You do get a mirror, but I just find for ease of use, I really like when palettes flip all the way open like that. The shade names are listed right on the palette, which I tend to like. I don't really like those plastic overlays because I just never keep them. And I don't like when they're flipped onto the back because I never know which way they line up. It's altogether too much. Just putting it on the front of the packaging like this just makes so much sense to me. So I'm glad that they've done that. I'm glad that there's not a lot of wasted space in this. Everything's lined out nice and neatly. I really do like the packaging of this. Where I have an issue though is the actual shades themselves. Now I know that this is just curated from fan favorites, so it's taking from a bunch of different palettes and it shows. There's really no central overlying color story here. Like I said, you do have more almost like floral spring tones, as I would consider them to be, and then more autumnal, grungy, murky kind of tones towards the bottom. They don't necessarily jive together. So looking at like this shade up here, Beam, I wouldn't pair it with this one down here. That's not to say that you can't, but I wouldn't. And so I do find that it is difficult to really create cohesive looks using this palette. For my own personal preferences, I would have liked to have seen a few more deeper matte shades rather than all of these really light shimmery tones. You get Mud here and Muse down here. Those are your two deepest matte shades. I think a deep plum would have been really helpful, or even put a little bit more of a purple tone into this deep red. As pretty as it is, I think the purple would have pulled like this shade and this one, and certainly Beam over here could have helped pull them together a little bit more. So as you saw when I did this eye look here, I was kind of struggling in terms of what I was going to put on the lower lash line. I felt the red would just pull a little bit too much with the purple. I didn't really want to use the brown, so I opted for the orange. It worked out, but a deep plum would have made this, just for my own personal preferences, would have made it more cohesive. So for me, it's just a bit of a jumble. That's sort of the nature of the beast when you have fan selected favorite shades. But I have a hard time looking at this and being like, okay, there's the look I'm going to do. Obviously, I was able to create at least 3 looks with it, and it's not an unusable palette. It's just for the lack of deep matte shades, I am going to be reaching for other palettes to use with this. That in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're paying $80 Canadian for a palette, I want it to be all-inclusive. So for me, that's a little bit of a drawback. From the performance aspect, I'm frustrated with the shimmer shadows. Some of them perform a little bit better than others. Some of them are very difficult to pick up on a brush. For example, this shade here, Heavenly, it just does not want to pick up on a brush, and it's more like a topper shade. Like, I get that they have these glow shades and then like metallics and foils, and they have these different names for the finishes that they have on here. But at the end of the day, none of them really have a strong base, with the exception of this shade here, which is called Shell. These more foiled shades, especially across the top here, there's just really not that much of a base element to them, so they are much more like toppers. I think Beam, the one that I have all over my lid today, while it does look pretty, I think it would help to pair it on top of Dreamy, but that again could just be a personal preference, but I do want to mention that. The mattes, there's inconsistencies across the line. Now, I am not an ingredient person, so take this with a huge grain of salt, but this is a vegan palette. Vegan palettes do not include carmine, which is that pigment that you normally see in red shades. That could explain why the shades that have these red tones to them feel drier. The synthetic ingredient or whatever they use in place of carmine might make it a little bit more stiff. That's not to say it doesn't work, but like in particular Flora, it feels very dry. I can hear almost like, you know when you get like baked eyeshadows and they feel really dry and they have that almost scratchy sound? That's what Flora sounds like to me. Muse as well, not quite to the same degree. Flora is the worst offender in here, but Muse as well. They just don't have that velvety feel to them. Whereas the browns, Divine and Ripe, they do feel, sorry, I'm talking like you know what I'm talking about. This shade and this one, sorry, this shade and this one over here do feel a lot smoother by comparison to the ones that have like a reddish tone to them. So it's just something to note. They do work nicely. The mattes far outperform the shimmers in my opinion. The shade that there's 2 shades that I was really excited about in here. Mustard, because it's mustard and I just love that kind of tone. And then this shade Pigeon down here, which is that brown green kind of duochrome shift. It's beautiful. It's such a pretty color, really strong red base, but you can see the green on there. Like, it's beautiful. However, it doesn't last to that same degree throughout the day. So while I did wear that, I think it was in look number 2. It's taken me several days to film this video, so I can't quite remember. But while I did put that all on the lid, by the end of the day, it just kind of was like, it was just kind of murky looking, and it didn't have that clear shift to it anymore. And it didn't hold up as well as I would like it to. Likewise, with the first look, I believe it was, where I used mustard, by the end of the day, that look had sort of all just blended together. And so you couldn't really see that clear mustard shade on the lids. It was just all kind of muddy, and everything had just sort of blended together throughout the day. So I can't in good conscience sit here and say to you that this is a must-have palette. I think it's okay. I don't think it's worth the price point. Pretty packaging aside, it's not pretty enough to really warrant that price tag in and of itself. It's an okay palette, but it's not my favorite by any stretch. I think if I had the choice to do it over again, I would have bought the smaller palette that they released at the same time, which was all mattes. That one had a very clear color story to it. Like I said, the mattes do outperform these shimmers. And then with that reduced price point, I wouldn't feel as bent out of shape about having to bring in some shimmer shadows to accompany it than I do with this one having to bring in deeper mattes to build this one up. So not a complete dud. I'm not mad that I purchased it. I don't think I'm going to get a ton of use out of this palette, but there are some really pretty shades in here. In particular, this like section right across here. I will use the mattes in here. I will use the shimmers, but they're not really my go-to. I think the winner in here is the shade Beam, this one here. But I wish that Mustard had performed better, and I certainly wish that Pigeon had more lasting power on the eyes. So there it is from my perspective. Again, some of this can come down to just personal preference in terms of what you like in a palette and what you like for the finishes of these kind of shadows. But for me, I think there's better out there on the market. If you're really drawn to that Pigeon shade, I would look to Insomnia from Makeup Geek. Just buy the single. That one is going to last beautifully on the eyes throughout the day. It looks pretty much the exact same, but the performance aspect is higher, and it's going to save you quite a bit of money from buying an entire palette. So if you have picked this palette up, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, or even if you don't, what do you think of the color story? What do you think of the idea of brands collecting and curating other shades from existing palettes and mushing them into one? Do you like that? Do you not? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. But for now, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.